Hey everyone, this is Fabio and welcome back. Today we're going to do a game discussion video on a game that I cannot actually show you since I've bought this and played this on Steam. And the game is Amnesia, The Dark Descent, developed by Frictional Games, a Swedish game company, independent studio, and released on Steam. And I think there are also physical releases now of the game on PC. This is a PC exclusive, which is kind of weird since I'm not a big PC gamer, never was, and personally I think that today the PC and the console markets are so similar. I mean, most of the games released on consoles are the same release on PC, just like there's no exclusivity in a way. All the games on PS4 and Xbox and whatever are going to be released on PC as well. Of course, there's are surely like independent studios and other PC exclusive, but it's very different, I think, as it was like back in the 90s or something when games on PC were different from the consoles. But we're not to talk about that. That's an entire video on its own. Let's talk about Amnesia. I was always curious about this game. Like, as you know, I'm a big fan of survival horror games. It's one of my favorite genre. And the interesting thing, but we're talking a bit more about this in the gameplay where we're discussing that. But it's interesting that this is a very different kind of survival horror in a way, because when you think about survival horror, I think to me, I immediately go to games like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and stuff like that. This was very different. I kind of know what the game was because I read about it, heard discussions on it on podcasts or videos. I have to thank Steven the Lucky Gamer for this game since he talked about it. I remember on an episode of another gaming podcast, and maybe he's even discussed on this video. I don't remember. I'm sorry about this, man. But the way he talked about it, since he's a big survival horror fan, made me really curious about this game. The way he was talking about the atmosphere of the game, how it's very scary, creepy. Again, we'll discuss this a bit later, but just I think this is a phenomenal game. I really, really liked it, and to me, it's one of my personal favorite survival horror games I've played in a long time, I have to say, because it really wanted me to play it and finish it, contrary to what happened with Obscure the Aftermath, that I didn't really care, and that's a big difference between a good and a mediocre game. And also, I was completely immersed in it, like because of the atmosphere and the story also, even though the story is kind of secondary, as I'll explain later. But let's just get into the story because it's kind of easy, kind of simple, and it's not the main feature of the game, I think. But the story, it takes place in a Prussian castle called Brandenburg or something like that, in the mid 19th century, so 18 something. Remember, like there's pieces of the diary dated 1839, so it could be around that. And you take control of this character named Daniel. Oh, you know nothing about him. You never see Daniel. It's and in a way, it's a good way to connect this character with yourself. I mean, you are Daniel basically, and he wakes up in a corridor of this castle completely not knowing why he is there, what's going on, and it's kind of lost because of memory loss. That soon enough you discover, like almost immediately, that it's self-inducted. So because he drank an amnesia potion that made him forget everything. So the main purpose of the game is to explore and survive the castle while trying to understand what's going on in this place, and try to unravel the mystery behind the castle owner, this mysterious Baron Alexander, while staying alive, and mainly and remember who you are, what you've done, and at the end the story turns into some sort of mission of redemption for Daniel, as you will discover why. I'm not telling you anything else, but it's interesting. The main reason is trying to understand what's going on, because all of a sudden, every time you finish a room or a certain task that you need to do in order to proceed in the game, like find a key, activate a mechanism, or something like that. There is this weird, really weird stuff like covering a room or the walls of the castle. This sort of not really goo or something like that. I mean, this weird gooey thing that progressively is expanding throughout the castle and even outside. There is a scene that you have to jump to a window from another one, and you can see that this strange material it's going through like the basement of the castle into the garden and the woods, like covering trees or something like that. This sort of it looks like a parasitic kind of. It's difficult to explain. Even after I play the game, I'm still trying to think, oh, what is this thing? And it's also important to explore the castle in order to find the diary of Daniel, that is the main tool to explore the background of the story in order to understand why Daniel actually came to this castle, why he seek the help of this baron, and the connection between this material, this goo, and something that happened to Daniel before. So, I think, however, that the story, even though I liked it, it's an interesting story. It's secondary, but like everything else in the game, it's kind of secondary because of the main feature of the game, which is the atmosphere. This is a phenomenal game in terms of atmosphere. As I said before, I loved it. I mean, it's one of the best survival horror game I played in a long time, and this is how a survival horror game should be all about. I mean, compare this, like make a comparison with like recent Resident Evil games that are infamous for the amount of action and weapons, and I mean they're barely can be barely called survival horror still. I mean, you are armed to the teeth. You're shooting all the time. I mean, in this game you have no weapons, nothing at all, not even like a stone or something like that, a knife or a gun, nothing. The only way that you can protect yourself is by stay hidden in the darkness, and that it's a way that you can avoid enemies. And at the same time, however, it's not safe for you because of the sanity meter. The more you stay in the darkness, the more Daniel goes insane, basically, because he is scared, and the less the sanity meter, like the more insane you get, the more difficult it is to control the character. Like the screen goes all crazy. It's very, very blurry, and it's kind of slow moving. It's a very interesting mechanics that I'm sure there are in other games with sanity meter. I think I never played it, so I might say something stupid, but I think there is a sanity meter in the legendary game for the GameCube, Eternal Darkness, and I want to play that so badly, but I don't have a GameCube. I can still play it on my Wii, but and so yeah, the sanity meter is very important, mainly because it's essentially in the control of your character. But in terms of atmosphere, it's great. Like this castle, at certain sections are claustrophobic. It's very dark. It's very important to create light by finding matches in order to turn on lights, like from candles or lanterns or stuff like that. Because light is the only way that you can actually explore and see where you're going, and helps you to recover your sanity. Because in the dark, as I said, the characters goes progressively more and more insane because, as I say, he's afraid and it's difficult to control. And another cool thing are the fact that there aren't many enemy in this game. I mean, there are some creatures going around this castle, but not as many. You're never like overrun. Just one instance, there are more than one monster at the same time coming at you, but it's important to the story that, and there are just 3 of them. But the fact is that you're completely defenseless, so there's no point in making this game too hard by saying like you have to face 5 monsters at the same time. And this is also one of the best and most scary moments for me in this game, because overall, I have to be honest, to me the game, rather than scary, I mean, It's really creepy. And I'm not, I said it before, I don't play this game to get scared, because I don't get scared easily by a video game. That's the thing. It's not that I just here saying, "Oh, I'm so brave, I'm never afraid, I don't fear anything." That's not it. I mean, of course, like, but the thing is, I know it's a video game. I cannot get so immersed that I forgot reality around me and say and get scared by playing a game. It's the same thing with horror movies. I don't get scared by watching it because I know it's not real. Not because it's a movie, but even the situation in the movie, it's ridiculous in a way. Like monsters, zombies. I mean, they're not real. What's to be scared? But for the most part, with horror movies, I make fun of them. I love watching them to have a laugh. Actually, kind of the ironic in a way, the opposite. But with survival horror games, I never play them to be scared. It never happened to me. Like the first game or survival horror game that I played was Resident Evil 1 on the PlayStation, and that is not a really scary game, but in a way it kind of creeped me out when I played it. I mean, the music, the idea of being in this really dangerous and at time claustrophobic mansion, I was like, this is really creepy, this is a really messed up situation. And with Amnesia, the interesting thing that we have to remember, this is a first person perspective, it's a first person game, which helps like improves the involvement even more, rather than also the fact that you don't see the character because you are the character, coincidentally named Daniel, but also like it's from your point of view, so it's even more personal. And it's like you are exploring this castle and this really fucked up story. um, but again, I wasn't really scared, but it's a really creepy game. So if you look for a really creepy experience, this game is for you. I mean, maybe you'll get scared. It's nothing wrong with it saying. It's not saying to, like, by having fun of you, making fun of you, because I can understand why. It's so creepy when you're in the dark. You're constantly hearing noises. You're always like this sensation that someone is following you or it's coming for you. That's why I think it's so creepy. And the thing is, I've played the game as they suggested. Right when you start, you say if you want to really enjoy the game, you have to play with the lights turned off and with the headphones. And so I did. The first time I actually played like this in my room with the without headphones, with the lights turned off in any case, because it's a really dark game. You're not going to see very well with all the lights. But then I tried with the headphones, and it's so much better and so much more creepy. And I remember like one of the most terrifying moments for me in this game was the first time I actually saw an enemy. Because at the beginning there aren't any. It's just very, very creepy. I mean, these rooms with these very dark corridors, there's like the cellars or a storage. I mean, you can constantly hear these weird noises and you don't know if it's something that's coming. But at one point I was exploring the cellar. Yes, it was the cellar, and I found something, I don't remember, that was instrumental for the story, maybe even a page of a diary or something like that. And all of a sudden, while I turned around to go back from where I came, I saw something. I was like, oh shit, like a sort of human figure kind of thing. But it was far away, so it was kind of hidden in the shadows. So I went like behind a column or a library or something like that, and I saw that it was approaching me, but then all of a sudden it turned around and went away. So I was like, what the fuck was that? And on certain cases, when I knew, like now I knew that progressively through the game, like there are these kind of monsters. Most of the time, the only way for you to protect yourself is to stay hidden. Of course, you don't try to run away from these things. They always catch up and kill you instantly. Yeah, I died a couple of times. Mainly because of that, I saw something too late. I tried to run away, but they kill me instantly when they catch on. And most of the time, I like at one point you hear them in the distance, like some sort of noises that they make, and you need to hide quickly. And if you stay hidden and don't make any noise, and of course you do not turn your lantern, they pass in front of you, and almost like unintentionally, you stay still, you don't make any noise, you almost forgot to breathe. So tense the situation is. It's fantastic when a survival horror game makes you do things like this. You know that you're playing a great one, and that's the main strength, I think, of Amnesia. It's, as I said, the story is interesting. The soundtrack is really good. I mean, it's really complementary to the atmosphere because it's very creepy. It's very haunting in a way. But for the most part, it's mainly ambient noise. That's the best. When you constantly hearing the creaking on the floor, noises, cries, screams in the background. It has to this super creepy effect that progressively, as the title suggests, you go down into the castle, you descend into the inner sanctum of the castle in order to unravel its mysteries. It gets more and more creepy. Like when you are in the prisons, in the torture chambers. I mean, yeah, it's a really fucked up story, but it's so great. And I cannot recommend this game enough. I mean, I cannot wait to play more frictional game now. I really want to play Soma, the latest game they made. It's a sci-fi horror game. I cannot wait to play that. Just waiting the price to go a bit down. And I'm really curious about the indirect sequel, A Machine for Pigs, still Amnesia called. But yeah, I mean, there's not much else I can tell you about the game itself because you really have to experience it for yourself. And it's not super new. I mean, it's a game released in 2010, so most of you probably had your chances to play it. I was just waiting for the prices to go down, and that's fantastic when all of a sudden I received an email like 2 weeks ago or something like that, um, by Steam, say that the games on my wish list where there was some sort of discount, like mid-season or something like that. So I was like, oh, let's see if there's something interesting. And I saw like Amnesia for £3. That's nothing. It was like discounted for like 90% of the price. I was like, oh, great, that's phenomenal. Yeah, let's buy it. It's £3. This kind of things that make you feel so smart when you buy a game for next to nothing. That's the point of sales, I suppose, but it makes you feel so good when you know you have a great game and you spend almost nothing. I mean, £3, it's almost a coffee in certain places here in London. Yeah, it's very expensive, I know. It's London. But to play a great game for a ridiculous price is like the best feeling in the world. We know that. And it's getting progressively harder and harder to do that because of this insane increase in prices in games. But we know that, and again, that's another story. So yeah, I cannot wait to play more of the frictional games. And I think that you really need to experience it yourself, since it's such a very personal experience. Like the gameplay, it's focused on this a personal nightmare, like the exploration in this castle, and also, interesting enough, this game has multiple endings. I discovered two of them, since I didn't want to explore the bad ending in a way. But it's interesting that it also gives you this option. So, I highly recommend Amnesia: The Dark Descent. As I said, probably most of you already played it, but it doesn't matter. I still recommend it if you haven't, because if you manage to find it for a good price, but even for if it's not too expensive, play it. If you like survival horror games or this sort of creepy adventure game, it's because it's so. As I said, this is how a survival horror should be. Survival. You have no weapons. You are completely defenseless, and with such a good atmosphere, it's almost terrifying at the point that it's fantastic. And that's the way I was talking about. Like when I think immediately to games like Resident Evil, they are so different from a game like Amnesia, and it's a good thing to have more variation on the formula because a long time passed, of course, since then. But I remember in the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 days, survival horror was like synonymous with Resident Evil and those kind of games. So, like from a third-person perspective with the tank controls, with weapons to explore like the Mad Laboratory or something like Silent Hill. That was the formula for a long time, and I believe that that's a difference between some sort of Japanese survival horror, even though there are different games like the Fatal Frame series. They're very, very different, but in a way they're still similar in the way they control it, and although it's focused on more like ghost stories than like experiment, like B-movie kind of games like Resident Evil or Dino Crisis or Silent Hill. I mean, but I haven't played many Western survival horror, and this was fantastic. Maybe they're more of a psychological horror kind of stuff, and if that's the case, maybe that's where my preference stands. I mean, I really enjoyed Amnesia. It's a fantastic survival horror game. I mean, I haven't had so much fun in survival horror games in more than 10 years or something like that. I mean, I haven't played many to be honest, but because in a way, that's the thing. When I think survival horror, to me it's immediately Resident Evil, and I still need to play Resident Evil 5, not even 6. But the thing is, in terms of gameplay, I didn't enjoy 4 as much as I wanted when I played it years ago on the Wii. And yeah, it's weird. I mean, to enjoy a simple game like Amnesia, and like much like it's a short game. It has a weird but interesting story. But its atmosphere and creepy effect, it's so powerful that I think if you like the genre, you need to play this game. And as I said, I cannot wait to explore more games by Frictional Games because this game was a good. Amnesia: The Dark Descent was a big hit for them, and it's interesting to think of these like countries and developer studios like Sweden. Honestly, I never thought about it before. Like, oh, it's kind of the same thing with the Witcher games. If you think about it, like Poland, when you think about a developing studio in Poland or Sweden, I mean, never. You usually think of United States or Japan. It tells a way how games have changed in a really good way. Also, I mean, even game developing is globalized as it should be. There are so many potential game developers up there that just need the ways to publish their games. I mean, it's fantastic. So, guys, I was almost going to another tangent. Let's stop here before I start talking about independent developer studios here in Europe or stuff like that. But bottom line, Amnesia Dark Descent, it's a phenomenal survival horror game. As I said multiple times, I cannot stress it enough how a survival horror should be. Like, you are alone, you are defenseless, you are in a like this sort of psychological horror thing. This is fantastic stuff. I loved it. It's not brand new, but it's still kind of recent. And of course, if you like survival horror, this is a must. No wonder there. I mean, if you like the genre, you need to play this. So, thank you so much for watching, guys. See you next time. Take care.